Gentlemen, welcome back to the shop on this fine eventide. The unfortunate demise of our most favoritist precision unboxing instrument has left us rather in the lurch and woefully inefficient on the unboxing side. As such, we're going to fabricable together a replacement for this. However, in order to do that, we need to use the Vulcan flux core welder. I had been using this. I cheated a little bit. I was intending to do a bolter on it, but you know, life gets in the way, and I set to using her on the flux core. Now I'm gonna switch her over here to solid wire because I've got the shielding gas now, the expensive stuff too, 25% CO2 and 75% argon. A little fancy. So I'm going to build something, and I'm going to use the Vulcan, and we'll test it out and see how well she do. This is the Vulcan from the Hazard Fraud, of course. And it's come with a spool of flux core that I have been using, but the roller started getting all fucky on me, as you see here. Not working real great. Might be on account of this bird's nest happening here, but we're going to switch over to solid wire. So we'll change the drive rollers and feed all this crap out and in. And I got this tightened up now. You do not want yourself a ladies' coiffure happening. That would be bad. And we'll change the drive roller over to the serrated 30 thou is the inside one. The 35 thou showing. And that ought to be her. Yeah, we'll get that in there first. Down there like so. Tighten that right the fuck up. Now, he'll swap the polarity, of course. Go from flux core. Well, nice and tight, anyway. Go from flux core to solid core. We want electrode positive. Now we got her back together. We got to turn her on to feed this through. Now, one thing that fucked me up on this machine is it times out. If it doesn't have an arc on it, it'll only feed so much wire and then it stops. It's sort of, I thought there was a problem with the machine, but it's actually designed that way. What you got to do is hit the cold feed. So we stretch out the liner in here while we stretch out the gun lead as much as possible, so that it's nice straight shot for that wire, and then we go ahead and hit the cold feed. There we go. Now, one thing I do is they don't tend to clean this wire, and it sits on a shelf and gets all dirty. You see this? This is just from a couple tacks with the wire core, and you see how filthy that is. Well, eventually that builds up in your liner, and it gets. This is an old hand's trick. What showed me this is you just stick, that's maybe a little too aggressive, but you get one of these clamps from a lady in the office, one of them HR types, and then just jam it on there, and that will clean it up before it goes in. Keeps the ball bearings out of the works anyway. We got her hooked up to the mean bastards in yonder pixie receptacle there, 240 volts. That means we can go 1/4 inch, and then conveniently up at the top of here is all of your settings. So we can go 1/4 inch, H5 or 6. What the fuck does that mean? H5 or 6? Huh? Oh, I see. Okay, H. A, B, C, D, E, F, G. There we go. But we'll give that a try. We're on 30 thou, 25% CO2. Oh, sorry about the fan noise. What are you going to do? We're welding. Not shields down yet. Now this here is just about useless. You might as well throw that right in the fucking bucket. But we keep that around, what, for somebody learning how to weld. Are they going to be able to weld with this? No, it's a fucking disaster. But part of learning to weld is learning to troubleshoot your machine and do your settings. You know, you hand somebody a gun, a MIG gun like this, and all the settings are done, they're going to be able to weld in about 30 seconds. But the trouble is, when anything's out of the ordinary, out of position, the machine's not set up right, or something fucked with the line, or something fucked with this. You know, that's when that's the hard part of welding with one of these guns, is actually troubleshooting your machine when the parameters aren't perfect. Vortex. This here is a pretty typical home gamer situation. Kind of a crappy fit up, not because of the actual tacking on my part, but because the material is different. So this is round wall, well, rounded corner, thick HSST hollow structural steel tubing. Whoa. And this has square corners, so the fit up isn't that perfect. But this is typical home gamer bullshit. Here's what you got to do: is you're going to burn through this top one, because it's so you want more heat on this one, so more time on the puddle on this one, and then you can stop welding. You just pull off the trigger, ease off the trigger, it'll stop welding, let it cool down, and then hit it again, and that prevents you from burning through. The other thing I was going to say, you'll notice my face ain't nowhere near this. You see autodidacts that learn welding on their own, they get their face right fucking in there, right smoke eater. So if you can, avoid that habit. You don't need to be right uptight in order to see what you're doing. Keep your head out of the smoke if at all possible. And then when you're running the MIG gun, you always want to consider where your coil is. You don't want this thing coiled up in a tight little knot. You want it as loose as possible. Nice. Now, this ain't my first time with the metal hot snot gun, but the two things to consider before you put your arm on anything is it going to burn you? Is there a hot spot you just welded? And second thing, any flammables around. I got one of these in my pocket, so I'll just put that in my back pocket. Now, if I was around a jerk, I wouldn't put that in my back pocket, because somebody light that on fire just for shits and giggles, and it's only fun the one time. Horntack. So I'm going to start in here and then pull it out this way. You see, I'm starting to burn through, so I'm just giving her a little rest, cool down. I'm trying to get the most heat on this thicker section. Basically build up this bottom puddle to reach up and grab this top piece. Now you hear that sort of hollow crackling when you burn through. It goes from bacon to sort of hollow bacon. Okay, so that's that tarp welded to here, but now I'm just going to reposition so I can get right in here, weld this guy to this guy. Now, of course, on the corner we want more heat on this corner than on this edge, because we'll melt through that edge far easier than we will right through that corner. That's really all there is to it. You just got to be aware of where you're putting your heat. Now we'll just hit this with the wire brush and have a look, and we can see made a mistake. There's a little hole melted away there. So luckily this isn't a production job. We're not worried about how much time it takes. If it takes an extra 30 seconds to put another dab in there, big deal. And then on this side as well, just got a bit of ugliness, so I'm going to go over it again. For no good reason other than cosmetology. I got this tacked all around. I'm gonna put a bead in here. You kind of want to think about where your heat is. Also, you got to make sure that you keep the oil away from this process. If there's any kind of oil on here, you get a bubble. No big deal, you grind it out. But a lot of times you can't get in there with the grinder, so you're left with some porosity. You want to avoid hydrocarbons if at all possible. Now, thinking about this weld, if we start on this end and pull it through here, we're going to have a hell of a lot of heat buildup and very likely melt through this end section. So what we'll do is we start on the end section and go into the meatier part, and that will allow us to not burn through. Okay, we got another fitment issue now. We've done the tacks and we've done the smaller welds. Now we're gonna do the big welds, what we gotta fill with a whole bunch here. And this is the home gamer prototyping bullshit problem, in that the material isn't the same. If I just use the same material, it'd be not really as big of a deal. But you see, we got a big gap to fill there, and this is fairly thin wall. So here's the thing, every time you put a weld in, the whole thing, the whole structure is a spring, and every time you put a weld in, it moves that structure. So we want to make sure that all of our small welds are in before we start fucking around with filling these holes up, because this is going to pull the whole structure over. So what we're going to do here is we're going to use the heat of the meat on this one. This guy's the beefy guy. We're going to build this up. We'll just run stringer beads until we get close enough, and then we can jump that gap. So we'll very likely do 1 or 2 beads in here, see how it goes, and then we'll do a third bead that'll actually tie this in. We're almost there. I'll just let that cool now. It's got more heat into her. Almost there. The metal wants to be joined. It wants to be together. You just got to help it along. Okay, so now she's stitched together. You just got to make her pretty. The beauty is in the eye of the beholder, and in this case we got stung a little bit undercut there, so I'll put a quick bead in and then we'll buff that out with the grinder. Hey, grinder and paint makes me the welder I ain't. A couple of chunks of flat bar for the basal platen. Could run this in the mill, but it's out of tram now, so I'm gonna run the zip cut. A couple things to consider when you're using these. One, where's it going to fuck off to when it does fuck off? Because it will fuck off, take you into a low Earth orbit. 2, keep your face out of the line of fire. When this thing explodes, you don't want it to be directly in line with your face or your body. You want to be off kilter, off to the side. That way if it does fuck off, it ain't no big thing. That's her at the proof of concept stage. Now we'll test her out before we spend too much time prettying it up with the unwilling victim, a brick. not teabag, not great though. Definitely room for improvement. And I got me an idea as to how to improve it. That'll be in the next one. Oh, for fuck's sakes. Thanks for watching. Keep your dick in a vice.